Thanks everybody for driving out today. This is our novice queen rearing workshop, sponsored by the Red River Apiarist Association, and thanks to Brad for hosting it. Queen rearing can be incredibly intimidating, just the concept of it. And a lot of that is the fact that if you go and you buy queens, or if you have been buying queens, there's a dollar value attached to it. And these days, they've never been more expensive. So there's a number in our head, a value system, where these are precious. They shouldn't be wasted. We should utilize them as much as possible. And since they're so precious, how could I ever make these myself when they must be handcrafted by these master beekeepers? And that's simply not the case. Queen rearing is a lot about letting the bees do what the bees do anyway. And since beekeeping is more of nudging bees to do what they normally do, but we change the situation to sort of drift them into a certain behavior, queen rearing is no different. Everything about rearing queens you can break down into smaller actions that you already do, that the bees already do, and it's just reassembling them in order to manufacture an artificial environment which makes the bees want to do this. And once you start raising your own queens, you'll really realize how valueless they are compared to what you think they are right now. Because when you're practicing queen rearing, if you make too many, or if I don't want to do this, I only need a couple of queens a year or a season, well, you can always just give them away, sell them, crush them. It's a bee. You take a look at our attitude towards drones, where if you're putting an inner cover back on the colony and you crush 3 drones, how much do you cry over that? But it's a bee. It's a bee. It's one of your bees. But a queen, it's like, oh, oh. Part of today is what we would like to do is introduce the attitude and the ideology that queens, although are incredibly important, especially with timing, even incredibly valuable, but when you're making them, how they can be less of that altar and more so of just a really good screwdriver in the toolkit.
I couldn't agree more, but I still struggle, like I'm sure most of you do. When we get out in the apiary, you'll see a whack of little nuke boxes over in the corner there, and you might think, well, that's a really great little mating yard for my queen grafting operation. Well, it's not. That's me not wanting to pinch queens that aren't doing their thing, right? I have equipment, right? So I'm not dedicating equipment to crappy bees that would be better used elsewhere. It would either sit in the pile or it would sit there with some bees in it. So the whole point over there is that failing queen might lay a frame of brood for me this summer. If she does, that's perfect. I can use that frame of brood for a boost of another colony. I can use it for making a mating nuke for a grafted queen that I've made. So it's just kind of a little brood factory over there. And if they don't do anything this summer, that's fine. We'll say goodbye in August, and I'll put the equipment away. I've wanted to do this for a long time, and the reason I wanted to do this is because I've discovered what it means to me to be able to make queens. Do I make all my queens? No. Do I buy queens? I absolutely do, because I need more queens, or at least I can use more queens than I produce. Do I think they're better than what I produce? No, absolutely not. Some of the queens that we've produced here are some of the best queens I've ever seen in my long, illustrious beekeeping career of 8.5, 9 years now. So that's just a comment on the idea that a commercial queen producer or retail queens or whatever you might have has somehow an air that you're paying for it, so therefore it's a whole lot better than what you can produce yourself. That's not true. Can you produce crappy queens? Yes, you can. Can you buy crappy queens? Yes, you can. So your cross section of what you're going to get is probably pretty consistent.
Also keep in mind too that when you're buying a queen, like let's say a Kona queen, those queens are packaged and shipped and have been in that cage for a while. And although they might be the peak of genetic planning, keep in mind that they're stressed, right? When you make your own, it's in a more natural environment. And you'll have people say, well, there's only one way to make queens, and it's this way. Or you have to be so focused on the genetics. And that's simply untrue. You know, you can turn around and you can learn how to fix a car, but you don't necessarily know how to restore it off the bat. Like, you can start here, and even a satisfactory queen is miles ahead. Like, the difference between the perfect queen and the queen that you can produce yourself is that far apart, right? And having the flexibility of being able to make your own queens will get you out of trouble in August, and will always provide you with a source of fresh queens going into the winter as well.
Yeah, one of the hallmarks that I hear people use a lot is, well, how long do your queens live? How long does a queen live? I don't think that's really a very necessary hallmark, because I replace them every year because they're so easy to make, right? You get a queen that's a year old, or replace a queen that's a year old. A queen that's less than a year old is going to winter better and perform better and just be a better queen. So I don't understand why it's a thing to try and get queens that live 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I actually have one 4-year-old queen out here. I have a couple of 3-year-olds. So I do kind of do that, but the reason I do that is so that I can graft from them. The 4-year-old queen that's out here, she's not performing very well, but she's still laying. So as long as she's still laying, I can pull those long-lived genetics. And maybe she doesn't have long-lived genetics. Maybe she's just, you know, won the crapshoot of 4 winters, but she's lived 4 winters. And I think that's pretty impressive. So that's kind of what I, try to inspire people to, you could say, well, my queens live for 3 years or 4 years and whatever. That's great. That's really impressive. You don't need that, because when you're done with your journey of queen rearing, and you're never done, but I mean, once you get into your journey of queen rearing, you'll see that they're so easy to produce. Just make a new queen, and then, you reset that, and you don't need a queen that's going to live for 2 or 3 or 4 years.
Just think about it like an oil change in your car. If you don't change your oil for a year, you're probably not doing yourself any good service. But if you change your oil every 2 weeks, you're not going to hurt anything, right? It may not be necessary. And people who have queens that last 3 or 4 years, keep in mind, genetics is only one component. Environment is another. Where are you? What's the air pollution like? Is there any chemical residues? There's studies out of BC, which when they had those heat domes, how queens would be failing because their mating flights, the sperm was getting degraded inside the drones because of just the environment of the time of mating. So you can't just say genetics, genetics, genetics.
I wrote myself some notes so I would not get too far off track. So my first question is, why should you be raising queens? I hear a lot of reasons that people don't raise their own queens, and there are some very good reasons that people don't raise queens. However, I want to dispel some of those roadblocks here today. And to me, the most important reason that a beekeeper could raise their own queens, or raise queens period, is because it's the most fun part of beekeeping. Do it because of that, because it's an incredible journey. And when you see the results of that, when you see a new colony, when you see a new nuke, and you see a colony making honey, and you raise that queen, that satisfaction and that feeling, like even now I get emotional about it, to see that happening. I go out through here in my apiary and I see colonies that are doing well, and I write my queen source on the lid of each colony, and I see that that's my queen. I just stand a little taller. I wrote here that the queen rearing is as rewarding as it is challenging. And it can be as challenging as you want it to be, really, because it's not that difficult. The bees do the magic. You just have to set the stage for them, and that's not that hard. You can take this to the nth degree. However, with a very little bit of study, you'll get 90% of the way there to the ultimate result, and 90% of the way is generally good enough for most people. Having spare queens can be a considerable asset in emergencies, particularly. I just had somebody message me today, do you have a queen that I can get? Well, no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. I haven't started my queen rearing yet. I hope to put together my queen builder here today while you watch, and then tomorrow or Monday I can start my grafting. So when things go sideways and it's August and you're losing your mind because your colony is queenless and nobody has queens that you can buy or steal, you've got queens right here on the side. You've got a couple of nukes, you've got a couple of queens, and say, hey, there's my queens. And you just take that. Your stress level is so low. You've got a really good colony, lots of resources, good population, they're healthy, lots of brood, but they have no queen. You don't want to lose that momentum in that colony. You've got a queen right here. Introduce your new queen. Done. That is just, when I started doing that, I think it was about 2020 and 2021 when my queen rearing process really kind of took off. That just changed my life. To be able to have my apiary and to have options to say, hey, well, this colony is not doing very good or whatever. All I need is a fresh mated queen and fix this problem. There's like 10 fresh mated queens over in the side of my apiary. I'm all good. Yes, sir, you have a question?
One of the questions is what if the problem's not because of the queen? Say it's something like there's maggots in the hive.
Queen rearing is not going to do too much for you for that. That'll be a completely different issue. So I'll have to cover that at some point.
And one quick note is one of the arguments against rearing your own queens is, let's say you're an urban beekeeper. Well, I'm only allowed so many colonies. Or this is just a hobby. I only want 2 colonies. I don't want, a couple of nukes, or I don't want to be producing more bees than I need. And you got to get your head around something really quickly here. You can turn around and raise a couple of queens or make a little bit of a nuke and have that off to the side as sort of like your spare tire. And in the fall, you can shake those bees out or use it to balance your other colony, or pinch off that queen, or someone says, hey, I'm in dire need of a queen. Well, I've got a spare here. This doesn't have to be, I'm not wanting to raise my own queens because I don't need them, or I might need them once in a blue moon. This is an insurance policy thing, and it doesn't cost you any bees. It doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of time, and it ensures the fact that, if you pull up a frame of brood in August and the pattern's just spotty and things are not going well, well, you're kind of hooped, because dancing bee isn't going to have queens in August. No one's going to have queens in August except for people that sort of have that spare tire. So it's not going to turn around and push your allotted amount of colonies you can have in the city of Winnipeg past 4. It's just going to be sort of like, a side dish thing that you can easily reabsorb in the fall for wintering down the road.
Add a little bit of context to what we're saying about, we keep talking about August, and for the very new beekeepers, and even those who may not have tried yet, to raise a queen and mate that queen in August or September or something, that's not a good time to raise and mate queens. So you need to have those mated by the end of July or so. That's your window. So if stuff starts to go sideways after about the end of July, and you don't have that queen on hand, you're pretty much at the mercy of your neighbor who's actually been raising their queens and has a spare for you. So you know, you can be that person. Spare queens, you can almost always sell spare queens, make a little bit of money if you're into that. There's value there. I always like to say, no worthwhile endeavor is easy. If what you're doing is easy, you're not trying hard enough. And if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Failure is part of success. It's not the opposite of. There's a little bit of work. There's a little bit of effort to queen rearing. But once you start doing it, you'll realize how incredibly easy it is. Because again, the bees do the hard work. So one of the reasons I've heard that people don't raise queens is they may watch YouTube videos and such, and they'll watch Paul Kelly. You know, anybody know Paul Kelly, University of Guelph? See those videos? You watch Paul Kelly build a cell builder. Have you seen that video? The thing is this tall. It has 6 queen excluders, about 500 frames of brood, and 3 cloak boards. And it takes 4 people a day and a half to put it together. So the hobbyist might look at that and say, well, that's what it takes. And you're absolutely right. You've got 1 hive at home. There's no way you can do that, right? You just don't have the resources. You may look at this apiary and say, well, yeah, you could pull enough resources. I'd have a hard time doing that. There's not that much out here. That's not what you need. You watch Michael Palmer videos. People know Michael Palmer videos. You see how he makes his cell builders? He shakes about 4 or 5 colonies into one box to make a cell builder, to make queens. And you look at that and you think, if that's what it takes, I can't do it because I don't have that kind of resource. And you're right. What's not apparent is you don't need that. You don't need that. If you want to make 1, 5, 10, 20, you don't need that. You can do it with 1 colony. I'm going to talk about a number of different ways to do that. I recently discovered a presentation that Randy Oliver did, and I'll make no apologies. I'm a huge Randy Oliver fan, and I happened to notice this video last winter that he had recently done, and he described creating a cell builder in a way that I'd never seen it before. And when I saw that, I thought, aha, that's the 1 colony beekeeper making queen cells. That's what this is. And it kind of reinforces the point that no matter what method you use, I'm going to kind of go over a few different methods here of how to get those started in your cell builder. But the cell builder is always the key, and it's consistent. Okay, there's a few different ways to put cell builder together, but it's always the same kind of thing. They need the same stuff to make those queens. I keep saying that the bees do the hard work, and they do. They love to make queens. Bees love to make queens, I've noticed. They will make queens at the drop of a hat. And we can capitalize on what the bees want to do anyway. I've found that beekeeping is the art of determining and guessing what the bees want to do and going along with that plan, because you're not going to change their mind. You just need to get on with what they're wanting to do and capitalize on it. When it comes time to make honey, then you know you're not going to change their mind. They're going to make honey, so let's just do that and let's make a ton of honey. So you can kind of set the stage to kind of make it easier for them, make them more effective, capitalize on it, make it a little better when you figure out what they're wanting to do.
First of all, also, does anyone here not know what the term cell builder means? Okay, so a cell builder is basically a queenless hive, which you're driving the bees to want to build queen cells. You've turned around and you've flipped that switch, and they've gone from queen right to queenless. And because the instinctive drive is we need a queen right away, the hive's resources and energy is sort of channeled into making that happen, because it's about, for them, it's survival, right? We don't have a queen, we are dying by degrees. So job number one, make a new queen. Bees don't really know how to make one new queen. Bees like to make a whole pile of queens, and anyone that's gone through their colony looking for swarm cells knows that there's never one. They've got another one tucked up somewhere. So to make them do multiple queen cells or build multiple queen cells isn't a trick to it. They'll just naturally do that. So when you build a cell builder, you're taking, you're building an environment. You're building a queenless colony that is now focused on just making more queens. And we've all gone into one of our colonies and found no queen and started panicking because it's queenless. But when you can stack the deck here and not only make it a queenless colony that's driven to make more queens, but to also pile on a lot of extra resources to make it easier for them to make new queens by providing them with a ton of population of the bees with the right age, the wax builders, the nurse bees. You're stacking the deck for success, right? So a cell builder is something where we're going to take components of your colony or your two colonies or how many colonies you have to build like the perfect little temporary queen making machine. And it's almost like shifting gears in a car, because the difference between queenless and queen right, well, if you're making a queenless colony, you're just taking that queen out. You haven't killed her, she's not missing, you're just disengaging, making that colony now do this instinctive behavior while you've got her, on the bench for the rest of the third quarter, and you can switch right back. So it's not costing you anything to do this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And part of that idea of kind of capitalizing on what the bees want to do or what the bees will do in a certain situation and setting the stage for success is the fact that there's essentially 3 different categories of when the colony will make a new queen. So the first one that I'll mention is an emergency situation. The queen has died or vanished, or beekeeper killed the queen, which happens a lot. So they have no queen suddenly. It's like everything is fine, and then suddenly we have no queen. And they realize that pretty fast, within minutes, they realize. And so very soon they will choose a worker larva of the appropriate age, which is very, very young, and they will begin to feed that as a queen and draw that out into a queen cell. That's fine, that's all and good. But they don't always do that. They don't always have the choice of when they do that. If the beekeeper goes in there, and sorry, I'm ragging on the beekeeper for killing the queen, but if the beekeeper goes in there in Labor Day to do some kind of inspection and kills the queen, they'll do that anyway. They will make a new queen, but I'm pretty sure it ain't going to work out, because mating success isn't going to be great. It's not the right, there's no nectar flow, it's less than ideal conditions, but they will do their best to make a new queen even then. Okay, so they can't always choose the time of season when they want to make a new queen. Same thing kind of goes for supersedure. The bees will, if they're unhappy with their queen for some reason, they will just make a new one. And then the new virgin queen will get rid of the old queen and then go and mate. But the same kind of thing, they don't always choose the right timing for supersedure. So maybe they're going to try that in a dearth. Maybe you're going to try that too late in the season or too early in the season. There's no drones, that kind of thing. So they can't always choose the right timing. The third time that they'll make a queen is swarm season. We all know that swarming is just reproduction. Swarming is making babies. Every being on earth wants to make babies, and that's exactly what a honeybee colony wants to do. Every spring, our swarm season is right about now. from about, you know, May long weekend-ish on through the rest of May and June, that's swarm season, and these bees want to reproduce. Tom Seeley has a lot of really good things to say on how many swarms have to be cast in order for the honeybee population to increase. So, what's your question, sir?
If the queen isn't new, and say it's been like a queen for like 2 years, and there hasn't been an inspection for like a month, what are the circumstances that will make them want to supersede their queen?
That's a really good question. And it's a little beyond the scope of what we need to cover here today. However, there are different things that keep them happy. And one of the things that keeps them happy is brood pheromone. If the queen is not laying enough brood, and there starts to be a decrease in brood pheromone, and I'm talking open brood, then they'll start to think, yeah, maybe the old girl's slowing down. And also queen mandibular pheromone, QMP for short. That's just a pheromone that the queen puts off. Then if they don't get enough of that, then they think, queen's getting kind of old. This doesn't feel right. And then they'll start a coup.
Remember the queen produces these pheromones that actually is the glue of the colony, right? And if she starts to wear out or get old, and it's before it becomes an emergency, the bees will decide, okay, time to replace her. So to our human eye, we can look at it and go, well, this is a perfectly fine queen. Why are they building supersedure cells? They have better senses than we do. So that's the reason why.
And maybe it's not a good reason because it was brought on by something that you did, right? Maybe that queen is fine, but you did a manipulation that created a situation where the bees thought, hey, there's something wrong here, and they start a supersedure situation. So you can intervene if you want. You can kill the supersedure cells, let the old queen live. Do so at your own peril, because you have to think, do I know more than the bees? If you think you know more than the bees, then go ahead. If you don't, maybe you better let them be.
My grandfather claimed that if he used to clip the wings of his queens, which it's not something I do or agree with, but he would say that if you did it wrong, they would supersede, because if the bees see a physical abnormality, they may supersede as well. That's a little bit of granny lore, but I think there's something to it.
I think there is too. I've seen and I've been told things like you mark your queen and you get carried away and you smear paint all over her eyes, then they supersede your queen. You clip her wrong, she's missing a wing or missing a leg.
You roll her on the frame when you're doing inspections and she looks okay, but well, it looks like, whoop, maybe she's missing part of a foreleg or something. What makes a queen acceptable? The standards between us and the workers can be miles apart.
I had a queen had 5 legs. She seemed fine. She was doing a good job. Well, they weren't happy with her. So yeah, John kind of touched on this, the ideal conditions to make a queen, and this goes along with the third situation when the bees will make a queen. They will want to make the queen in swarm season. Well, what makes swarm season swarm season? Can anybody shout out one thing that swarm season has going for it? Drones. Yes. What else? What else is going on in swarm season that the bees are...
Bunch of flowers?
Bunch of flowers. The nectar flow is vital. Pollen flow, right? Bunch of flowers. What else?
Things getting pretty crowded in there?
Things getting crowded in there. High population. Lots of workers, lots of nurse bees to make queens.
Talk a little bit about congestion. Like when workers start backfilling the brood laying area, that causes congestion. But I threw a couple of honey supers on. Well, what they view as congestion, if you are noticing I have congestion and I just give them more space, their minds may already be made up. If you're not throwing on drawn comb, they can't lay eggs in there or store honey in there. although you gave them space, it may have been too little too late, or it may have been the wrong kind of space, which is by and again, a honey super isn't a brood chamber, right? So turning around and just trying to get rid of that congestion is more about how you go about it. So you can still get that reproductive spur, even though you think you've compensated for it.
And I know I've battled it too, and I paid the price. A new beekeeper always battles no drawn comb. So that first year, your first spring after your bees overwinter, they're going to swarm on you because you're going to have foundation, and foundation is not space. Foundation is really not anything to them because it doesn't give them comb that they can, the queen can lay into right away. So I fell for that. I was doling out foundation because that's all I had, and it didn't help. They all left. It was highly disappointing. Okay, so we have the ideal conditions for making queens, right? We've got a nectar flow, we've got pollen flow, we've got lots and lots of bees, we've got high population, we've got drones, and so this is swarm season, and they have that swarm impulse. They're wanting to make those queens, so we can capitalize on that situation, and we can even synthesize some of it. We can synthesize the nectar flow with feeding. We can synthesize the pollen flow with transplanting pollen frames into the cell builder. So the cell builder is something that's synthesizing that highly congested, ready to make queens queenless. We're making it queenless, so we're taking advantage of the emergency impulse too, not only the swarm impulse. So we're giving them everything we can possibly do to say, go to town, girls, and they will do that.
Think of it like you're playing poker and you're able to pick out of the deck the best cards that you want.
Hello?
So instead of it occurring naturally, you're basically guiding it to, of course you want to do this, because why would you not, right? You're taking there's no good argument for them not to start making new queens. And also keep in mind, bees want to make more bees. They don't necessarily want to make honey. That's a byproduct. It's a byproduct. They're not there to make honey. They're there to make more bees. That's their first number one job, is to secure and increase their population. The honey is a byproduct that we enjoy, that we focus on, because we generally make money off of it. So think like a bee, and you'll understand the drive that they have to make more bees, not just honey.
So you've probably been told that the only way to raise queens is to graft, right? Anybody heard that? Has anybody not grafted and thought, I don't want to graft because I don't want to graft?
Where you have big sausage fingers and manipulating those tiny little grafting tools is like just not going to happen.
This is a grafting tool. Can everybody see it? It's really tiny. Grafting. What's grafting? You take the tiny larva, you dig into that cell, and you pick that larva out, and then you take your cell cups and you put that little larva right down there in the center of that cell cup. Easy peasy, right? Sounds scary to most people. And I will, since I've done it, and I'm no master grafter, I will say that it is the best way, but it is not the only way. I don't like that so many people are held back from raising their queens because they don't want to graft. It sounds too difficult, or it is too difficult for them for some reason. So I'm kind of here to dispel that and say there are other ways. Okay, so here's one way.
So if you don't want to actually graft moving that larva, well, good news is the bees will actually do that for you.
Some of these systems are kind of missing pieces, but I'll describe it. So this is called a Jenter system. The Nicot system is very similar. And what happens here is you have a little matrix of comb here, and on the back you place tiny cups.
So they're tiny artificial cell cups. And this piece right here will actually hang in a frame, like similar to this, just in the middle, that you insert into the builder colony.
Little cell cup goes in the back of the system, and then you trap your queen in the Jenter or Nicot cage and leave her in there, and the theory is, and it does work, she'll lay eggs in those little cups. So you don't have to transfer them. She lays them right in there. And that's awesome, I think.
This cover here works like a queen excluder where the queen cannot leave. So you always know where she is, but workers and attendants can go back and forth and tend to her. So she's not isolated or starving or stressed. Where do you get those?
Bee Supply has all this
You get them at Bee Supply. You can find them online, but cautionary tale
Yeah.
is there's brands, Jenter, Nicot, good brands, and if you buy some brand from wherever that you've never heard of before, nothing's compatible. Nothing at all is compatible. And you'll get shipped a kit, and if you, because some of this gets lost or some of this gets broken or some of it's just consumable, getting replacements is impossible and nothing else fits. Plus, Jenter and Nicot have really good reputations. Spend the extra money and get the good one.
I've seen a lot of people that buy a Nicot knockoff out of China, and they go to use it and it doesn't fit together and the queen won't stay in and she just gets out and it doesn't work at all. So that's a total waste of money. So this is kind of how this goes. I've got a mix of equipment here. I can't find Chris's frame, but so these are the Nicots, but it's very similar. You have these little standoffs on your grafting frame, and the little cup that she lays into is here. So you pull that out of the back. Okay, you've got the little tiny larva in there, and you stick that little cup onto this holder. It doesn't fit because this is a Nicot holder and this is a Jenter cup. So I'm going to switch systems. So that pushes into that little cup. Okay, so now you've got your little larvae inside that Jenter cup. You put that holder on the, okay, this is a Nicot system too. So that goes on there, right? Okay, and that goes into your cell builder. And they'll build that queen cell right off of that little cup. Okay. One really nifty thing about this system is the hair roller cage. Once that's all built out, you put that cage over it, and when your virgin emerges from that cell, she's in that cage. And you'll see kind of in a little bit why that's so important. So that virgin is in there, and she's not going to get up to any mischief on you. I really like that system. It's a nice way to get around grafting if that's your roadblock.
And you might say, oh my God, Brad, like, I mean, I only have 3 colonies and maybe I'll need a spare queen or 2. Why would I want to make 40?
So do 2 or 3.
That's the thing. You don't have to fill the whole boat. And also keep in mind is that some of these larvae aren't going to make it. You know, the attendants or the wax builders may go, there's something wrong with this one, or this one's a little screwed up, or maybe you bumped it, whatever. And they're not going to form it. So you can do 10 and maybe only 8 will get built out, right? And maybe the cell that the queen cell that they build might be a little off on angle, and it doesn't fit the cage very well. So you don't want to risk that one getting out and killing the rest. So, you know, you select that one out. So maybe you only get 4 really or 5 really good viable ones anyway. Oh, I don't need 5 queens. That's not the point. You know how you get rid of a surplus queen? The easiest way? You crush her. You didn't care about that drone or that you killed when you put that inner cover back on, and it's still life, right?
Or you can sell it.
Or you can sell it.
You can sell cells, you can sell virgins, you can sell mated queens. They just increase in price as you go up.
You can take one frame out of a box of mixed brood and put it with this virgin queen and have a tiny mini nuke and let it struggle along trying to catch up for all summer. And that's your spare tire. And if at the end of the fall you never used that queen, you can replace one of your older ones with it. You can shake those bees out. You can winter it as a nuke. You can use it to balance. It just gives you more tools to avoid more crisis situations. But it's like, I don't need queens. You don't have to keep them, and there's 1,000 places to put them. So you've got to get out of that mindset first and foremost.
And don't forget that if, no matter how you're starting this system, you've got less than 100% take on your cells when you graft. They're not going to draw them all out, and if they do, you shouldn't be here because you're way too good. 100% take is doable, but it's it's an advanced thing. You're not going to have 100% emergence even. Some of them are going to die in the cell. There's such things as viruses that get in there and take care of your queens. So you're not going to have 100% there. You're not going to have 100% mating success. So mating success can be 75 to 80%. It can be higher. July is usually pretty good for me for mating success. But that's why I would say if you want 5 queens, you better start with 10, all right? Because then you can lose some, or even more. Like John says, if you start with 20, you can kill 15, or sell them. See, I like the way you think.
Remember, there's the Red River Apiarist Association's Facebook page. There is the bulletin board at Bee Supply. There's Kijiji. You can just throw it out on social media and you can get rid of those queens. But banking it, turning around and putting it into a small little mini nuke and keeping it for a month and a half doesn't cost you anything and gives you insurance. So if you're really stuck with all these extra queens at the end of the season, okay, yes, maybe you'll have to kill them, but you've given every opportunity for them to be used up. So, and you've got to get over the guilt. You've got to get over the guilt. Bees are killed every time we inspect. We'll roll some, we'll accidentally crush one. We be as careful as we can because we love bees, but we can't deny the fact that there is a cost. And a queen is a worker that's a little bit more developed. She's not the holy grail, the almighty bee. She is just another, she's like the transmission in your car. Doesn't go without it, but it's not the entire car. So you've got to get out of that mindset.
So a few other methods before we go and actually do something fun. I always kind of hesitate to mention OTS because I'm kind of typecast as the OTS guy. OTS is a perfectly valid way to make queens and to make splits. It's hard to get the volume that you can get in something like grafting. If you want to do volume queens, there's nothing like grafting. You have to do grafting. If you want to just make one split, make one queen, OTS is a pretty darn good method for that, and primarily because it is dead simple. And OTS is very similar to what they call a walkaway split. Just roughly how that works is you basically make a nice strong colony queenless and they make an emergency queen. That's basically the idea behind walkaway split and OTS. The difference in what you can do is choose the timing, swarm season, and how strong that colony is. You can even make it stronger with some additional resources, pollen frames, additional nurse bees, stuff like that. So that's how you can make those better. We'll show you kind of a little more about OTS and walkaway splits when we get out here in the apiary. using swarm cells. I guess OTS isn't the easiest thing because the easiest thing is using swarm cells or even supersedure or emergency cells. But swarm cells, highly recommended by me. A lot of people will say, oh my goodness, don't use swarm cells.
You'll get swarmy bees if you use swarm cells.
It's like going to the pet store and asking for the puppy that doesn't want to make babies, right? That's exactly what that is, because the swarm impulse is simply a colony that wants to make babies. It's completely normal. Now, if you have a colony that wants to swarm in early April, don't use those. Yeah. That's abnormal. If you have a colony that's wanting to swarm at the end of May, that's fine. Use those. In June, that's fine. That's a normal time for the colonies to be wanting to swarm. And it's just as simple as finding that swarm cell, taking that frame and maybe a few more, put it in a nuke box, off to the corner, let it sit there for, let's just do my math. You got to kind of guess how old that cell is to get the math right, but I'd say 2 weeks minimum before you open that lid. Leave it alone. Don't do nothing with it.
And when you open the lid, if you find, you know, eggs and everything's working out perfect, great, success. If you find there's no queen and that cell is empty, maybe she got picked off during a mating flight, you didn't lose anything. You put those bees back. You didn't lose anything. So even doing these exercises in practice, I don't need another queen, or I've got enough queens, or I've got enough bees. Try it just to see. Try it just to see what happens, because these little exercises, these little practice things is what we get more comfortable with doing other types of queen rearing. And it also, again, mentally prepares us to devalue the queen and bring it more down to a mortal level of understanding, because that's really the biggest thing.
I think this is cool. I've never really done it, but you know, I've kind of looked at it, people who do it and whatnot. Every method has one requirement in common: a strong cell builder. And it doesn't matter what method you're using, whether it's grafting or OTS or walkaways or whatever, you have to have a strong cell builder. The beauty about a swarm cell is it's already been through the strong cell builder phase because it's swarm season. That's exactly what it is. This has been dubbed the Hopkins Method. So you got your hive. It's nice and strong. You pull out a frame of the right age larva. We'll go over that. It's as young as you. Mel Disselkoen said that if you can't see it, it's perfect. So, you know, the larva is actually fairly straight. It's not very curved, and it's about the same size as the egg. So it almost just looks like an egg laying down in a pool of jelly. Yes, sir.
So how can you tell if it's actually there if you can't see it?
Exactly.
Well, if you can't
That's
see
the challenge.
if you can't see it with your eye, but you can turn around with a magnifying glass, which should be in your beekeeping kit, or cheat and you can pull out your phone, hit camera, and blow it up.
I have a little LED flashlight that really helps me.
Yeah. And then you can see it.
And you know from looking in your beehives, right? You know that you're going to have sealed brood in the center. You're going to have old plump brood around that. You're going to have younger brood around that. And you're going to have eggs around that, right? You've seen that, right? So you kind of can see that progression.
Sometimes I see like brood off to one side.
Sometimes it's not quite that perfect, I realize.
That side, and then there's just a little bit of hatch.
But generally you can follow some kind of a timeline that she's laid these first and then progress. And then you'll get to eggs. And when you get to eggs, you're one cell too far. So just back up one cell. And that's probably the one you can't see, but it's in there. And you'll see, what you will see is a little dot of jelly. They do not feed eggs, and they do not feed empty cells.
Yep.
So if there's a dot of jelly in there, but you can't see the larva, it's perfect, because there is a larva in there. Okay, so that's how you can tell when you can't see it. All right, so I'm going to show you this. The Hopkins Method. There's a book available, and I think I'm going to buy that book and read it so I can talk a little more intelligently on this. This is not a drawn frame, so it's going to be a little harder, but pull your favorite frame from your breeder queen, find that age of larva, and I've seen people use a pencil eraser, and they'll identify that cell, and they'll just kind of break down the cell walls around it so that all that's left is that one cell that they want to raise a queen from, okay? And they'll do that a few times on this frame.
So like donuts. Donuts around
So you just
the cell
basically
you want.
crush the, but
Yeah.
what about
You
the
just isolate it.
Yeah.
cells around it?
No, the one cell that you pick, and then you flatten the ones around that cell that you've picked.
Oh, so it's sort of like basically like a tower?
Yeah,
Yep.
which
Yep,
almost
so it's
look-
isolated.
which
You've got
almost
this
looks
one
like
cell,
bees, right?
one cell sticking up, right? So I built this, and this is a proof of concept. If I were to build these to use or sell, they'd be a whole lot nicer. But basically, it's just a shim to allow that frame to sit here. And one of the principles that the OTS system uses is that the orientation of the cell means something to the nurse bees. And if the cell is horizontal in the hive, it's a worker or a drone, but we're talking about worker larvae here. So it's horizontal, it's a worker, and they'll feed it as such. If the cell is vertical, they'll realize that's a queen, and they'll feed it as such. So that little change in orientation. So what this is doing is it's using that principle. You're taking that horizontal cell, you're doing that little manipulation that I showed you, and then you're going to lay it like this on top of that nice strong cell builder. Put your lid on there, wait about a week,
Yep.
and come back, and you should have cells drawn down from that frame like this. Well, that's kind of a problem because this is plastic foundation. If it's wax foundation, you can cut that cell out and put it in a nuke or use it elsewhere. Plastic foundation, that's a little harder. You can probably still do it if you're very handy with a very sharp knife. Maybe warm the knife up. But I think one thing you could do is if you got a nice strong colony, take that queen, because you want to make it queenless anyway for a cell builder. Remember, a cell builder is queenless. Take that queen out, put her in a nuke. Don't take too much out of here. Just take a frame, maybe a shake of bees, and then make this queenless. Put your frame in here, let them draw the cells, but don't touch it. Let the cells emerge, and then that queen will go and mate. You've just requeened your hive. Just like that.
Almost automatically.
Almost automatically. But the same thing can be done with an OTS model.
Does everybody know what OTS stands for? It stands for on the spot, because you can turn around and do it while you're going through your apiary, doing your own general chores, and you can just, by making a quick notch, which we'll demonstrate when we get out there, and then walk away. And if it works, you're great. And if it doesn't work, again, it costs you nothing.
You can initiate queen rearing in a minute or less with OTS.
Now,
You'll have to do these different methods to find out why the different difficulties, because different beekeepers have different pain points with every method, right? Some people don't like grafting for certain reasons. Some people don't like OTS for certain reasons. Some don't like walkway splits for certain reasons. So you have to try all of this stuff for yourself.
and as well, this works for me. This works for my apiary. This works for my preferences. You should kind of get familiar with them all, maybe do them all once, but you're going to find out what is really good for you with the amount of queens you need, with the successes you have, and with your goals. So each one is all viable, and each one has advantages over the other, but it really depends on what's a good custom fit for yourself.
Like most of beekeeping, I often say, people ask, well, what's the best something or other? You know, what's the best way to feed your bees, or what's the best this, or what's the best that? And there's so many, and I often answer, the best one is the one that has the downsides that you can put up with, because they all have disadvantages. And so if you can put up with the disadvantages of OTS, you can put up with the disadvantages of grafting, then use that method, right? So it's far more about you than it's about the bees. And that's why I wanted to show you these different methods. Not that I think I've trained you on how to do these. I know I haven't. But the point being that this is far more about you than it is about the bees, because the bees love to make queens. We just have to kind of get on that.
You take out those seed cups and then you put it into those ones that are hanging vertically.
Yeah.
Okay, you take that, say you have 10 of those now in there.
Mhm.
Do you take that whole frame and just put it into your...
In the cell builder.
Like, is that like part of the hive?
Well, you
Yep.
pull your Jenter frame out,
Yeah.
and then you put your cell frame, because you've loaded it from your
Right.
Jenter kit,
Yeah.
back into the same spot.
So it can just go back into the hive?
Yep.
Like into a regular hive? which
No, it goes back into your cell builder,
Yeah.
because you've
and,
primed
and that'll
this,
all
yeah.
start to make sense in just a few minutes here. I'll show you how that all goes. I am going to get the order of things out of order here next, because there's something that I want to show you that takes, say, a half an hour to take effect. So we're going to do that. And I just wanted to touch briefly on mating nukes. I think a lot of people overthink mating nukes. I think making mating nukes is one of the easiest things there is. And this is one of them. Honestly, I don't recommend this kind of thing for hobbyists, but you know, you can make it work. It's just a little tiny hive. It's got these little tiny frames. I find these really difficult to get them drawn, and you know, if you don't have brood in here, the bees don't want to stay, but they're nicely insulated. It's an industry standard thing. There's a little feeder built in here. So there's a lot going for these. They're a little pricey for, I think, what they are. They're like 35 bucks, I think, for these things.
Like, they've got little gates so you can move them and put them around
Little doors, you can open up the bottom.
for
And
ventilation.
you dump your bees in there and close them up. So that's one kind of mating nuke. Big time queen producers may use this kind of thing. Okay, not saying you can't. That's a good method. I find minis a real pain. I just do. My mating nukes are full size frames. That's because it gives me flexibility. I can just pull a frame from any colony here and make a mating nuke. Done. Like, it takes me minutes to make a mating nuke.
And you know who doesn't care? The bees don't care.
The bees don't care.
Bees don't care. If there could be bells and whistles, if it's convenient for you, do it this way. If it's convenient for you to do it another way, or if you've got a larger operation or a smaller operation, it's about finding the fit. Anyone that tells you that this is the only way to do it is so off base. If there was this is how you keep bees in a book, it would be a bestseller. Everyone would have it. There's millions of books about keeping bees because there's that much variety, and it's about sourcing what fits well and works well for you, your size of operation, your temperament, and your geography. So don't let anyone say that this is better than this or that is better than this.
It's totally up to you. I tried minis here. I made some minis and I tried them for about 3 years, and I pulled my hair out, and that's why it's so short. And I wasn't this gray before I started with the minis either. And I hated them. I think I'll probably go back to minis at some point, but in a little bit of a different format. I've sort of figured out some of my pain points. This is a really good little mating nuke. This is a 5-frame nuke. This can actually make a nice little cell builder. Okay, so you can do cell builders, mating nukes in this kind of configuration as well. Okay, so again, I'm getting things a little out of order here because I want to let this sit for a bit so I can properly demonstrate it. I'm going to show my favorite way. There's lots of different ways to do things, but my favorite way to make a split. And people ask me this all the time. Well, how do you make a split? It's actually really easy. Whose life goal is to sit and find the queen? No hands. Nobody likes that. Actually, my wife does. She loves to sit and I can't find a queen. I said, Carol, come and find it. So she's good at it. She comes and does that for me. I'm thankful for it. So this is a no find the queen split. And you can make these as strong or as weak as you want. I'm going to demonstrate just kind of a medium size kind of a system. There's going to be bees everywhere. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this top box, and I know there's some brood up here, but the first thing I want to do is find the frames that I want to use for my split. And typically I don't want to make a split with a lot of open brood that the little tiny split has to feed. Plus that puts off the time for emergence. I want to make a split that's going to have sealed brood so they don't have to feed it, and it's going to emerge and boost the population of that colony quicker, right? So that's what I'm going to look for. Pretty sure the brood in the top box is going to be more open, so I may have to dig into the bottom one. But we'll do that anyway. So I'm just going to find that first of all. I'm not worried about where the queen is, but I know she's in one of these two boxes, so I'm going to be careful. And these bees are going to beat me up. They're pretty good. They're pretty good. I take a cursory look for the queen, because if I find her, then that just makes it all that much easier, right? Would that make a good split frame? Do you think? Yes or no? On a scale from 1 to 10? Yes. I'd say that's an 8. A little bit open brood, but it's pretty good. It's got some feed in it. That's good for a split, right? Where's the queen? Is she on this frame? I don't know either. You think the queen's on that frame now? I don't think so either. Time for that to come out anyway. Okay, so I see a bunch of eggs and stuff on this side of the frame. So scale of 1 to 10, good for split? It's probably a 0 because it's got eggs. I don't want my split to have to raise eggs, and it's going to be 3 weeks before those turn into bees. There's pollen, a little bit of feed, and a decent little patch of sealed brood. So scale of 1 to 10. That's probably almost a 10, isn't it? So where's the queen? Is she on that frame? I didn't see her, but I don't know. Is she on that frame now? Probably not. Right? Okay. So that's probably all I need for my split. And I need to fill this box back up, so I'm just going to randomly grab a couple of frames here. Not too randomly. I don't want to stick a bunch of honey frames in the middle. So if I find something that's got some open brood, that would be ideal. And I still have to be careful because the queen might be in this box too. And it's this. So I just kind of scraped open a queen cup. You see those all the time, don't you? In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, a queen cup that has nothing in it is exactly that. Nothing. So there's a bunch of eggs and young brood on that, so it's perfect for the middle. Okay, did you see the queen? Nope. You didn't they? You weren't watching. Who knows where the queen is? Nobody. Nobody knows where the queen is. It's the whole thing, right? I'm gonna narrow down where that queen is. I'm taking a cursory look for her, but you don't need to. And if you see her, then you know where she is, right?
Brad, I'm sorry to ask.
Yes, sir.
I was a little busy. What method are you showing us?
I'm just showing just basically making a split without having to find the queen.
Almost like a walkway.
No, we're not making a queen with this, so we can use this for a split. There's a queen right there, but let's pretend we didn't see her. Right, there's a big black queen with a yellow dot. Everybody wants to see the queen, right? So she's actually really nice looking. That's yeah, that's one of my 2022 grafted queens. Yay! I love it. Okay, so pretend like I didn't see her. Where's the queen? Well, if I didn't see her, then I don't know. But once I get done with this last frame, I'm pretty sure I know. Okay, now, typically I'd actually have a different box. I'd go from one box to the other, but I didn't pick up one, so I did it same box. Where's the queen? In the bottom box. Because almost all the bees are, and there's almost nothing left in this box. So, we have this really awesome device at our disposal. That's called queen excluder. And I can make sure the queen stays in that bottom box. Put my second box back on. Now this box has got a lot of stuff in it. I noticed while I was shaking. There's there's eggs, there's young larvae, there's nectar. There's all kinds of goodies in here. And I'm going to put the frames that I want to use for my split right there, right in the middle. Okay? Has anybody seen this show? They know what's going to happen here? Any guesses?
Yep.
What's going to happen?
Well, the nurse bees are going to go up.
Lots of them anyway. The fact that there's open larvae in here, that's a good thing because they'll want to come up here and tend to them and feed them and whatnot. And particularly if it's a cool day or if I leave this overnight, then they need to keep that sealed brood warm, so they're going to come up and tend to that. So this is what we're going to leave for, I don't know, half an hour or so, and we should get some decent population up there in that time frame. And then we'll come back and do step number 2. Now this is kind of a method that I saw Randy Oliver do, or at least explain in his video. And it wasn't his video, it was him doing a presentation for someone. And it really spoke to me. Number 1 rule about what you want in your cell builder. Does anybody remember? I didn't say it was number 1 rule, but queenless, right? Okay, so we have to kind of do the same thing. We need to find the queen or determine where she is. And I like that method. I think for what we're going to do, we're actually going to have to find her. She's 22 Carpathians, so she's going to be marked. I should have my wife doing this. She's much better at it. But I'll try my hand. It's kind of like having an audience watch you watch paint dry. You know, watch the grass grow. It's heavy with nectar.
Nectar or honey?
Well,
Is nectar heavy?
both. Well, nectar's heavy too. So that's kind of the same thing. And I don't look at the honey frames very long because she's not likely going to be there. Nothing in that cell, no worries there. These are so strong that I expect them to start swarm preparations. I've been so nervous because I wanted to use a nice strong colonies for today, but I've been watching these for about a week thinking, oh, they're gonna hit the trees like Friday or something.
So the one you just crushed, was that a swarm?
No, just a cup.
You don't think they're too bothered by all this wind then?
No,
The bees?
no, it's not really very windy for them.
Not bothered by us.
Thank you. Really heavy. It's really hard to hold them like that. So I was going to ask around at the beginning, while I'm sitting here doing this, we might as well visit. So who here is brand new, maybe just got their bees first this year? Do we have very many people in that boat? So a couple? Okay. That's good. I'm glad you came out to this. It's kind of hard to see. I'm looking at the sun. See, these frames have got eggs, so there'd be prime real estate for that queen to be on it.
Isn't she usually in the bottom box?
No, she's got to lay in the top one too.
Yeah, mine just went to the bottom box.
Yeah, they kind of go back and forth. But I mean, I'm into nectar again, but I can see sealed brood on the next frame, so she's not very organized that way.
What color will she be?
She should have a yellow dot.
She's like mine, having brood on the edge.
Yeah. Seeing what I'm seeing here, I am kind of expecting her to be in the bottom, especially the number one suspicion is that on frame number 10 and I haven't found her. So I'd rather chalk that up to her being in the second box or the bottom box instead of I just can't find her. So I'll set this one aside. This is why I don't run doubles. Yeah, probably. It is kind of a bad idea. Like, I should have set that lid down upside down and then set that box on there because she might be in there and she could, through my manipulations, fall in the grass. I'm trying to hurry, and that's not always advisable. I always want to take one out and give me some space. A little bit of space to work is always nice. That last queen, I should have done this the other way around because I found that last one.
So what's that at the bottom there?
What are you meaning? What is that? That's a drone cell.
Drone cells, right?
Yeah. Queen cell is not horizontal. Never. But you got a yellow dot, which they're actually really easy to see, the yellow ones. If the yellow dot hasn't wore off. Which that happens, right? See, this is one of the things that I think John was mentioning, where they start to, when the things that pressure them into swarming, when you can see this sealed brood, it's emerging, and it always emerges from the center out, because that's how she lays. And you can see that as it emerges, they're backfilling that with nectar.
Yeah.
So she can't lay there now. And they're going to plug that right out, and then she... and then she lays less, so there's less brood pheromone, and then they say, hey, less brood pheromone, we better swarm. Coupled with, you know, other things that make them do what they do. See, they're plugging that out too.
What do you suppose moves them to do that plugging and not waiting for
Nectar flow and not room to put it, right?
See, yeah.
And it's normal because in nature they don't add boxes, so they'll fill the cavity they're in, and the indication that the cavity is full is that we're backfilling the brood nest, because they're hoarders, right? They can't help bring honey in. They're just kind of crazy that way. And that's just the progression of that. And they'll even do it with pollen. They'll backfill pollen really bad sometimes. There doesn't seem to be much of a pollen flow right now. I gave John a task to find me a pollen frame or two, and he's still working at it. Did you find one?
Well, pollen's a little lean.
It is, isn't it? I
sure.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, so we've got
You had to find me a nice, clean, beautiful frame,
some
didn't
here,
you?
and there's some open brood.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty,
this side has a
pretty
bit more.
terrible. I
But
don't
this
like
is-
that at all.
We're going to be here for a while.
That's awful. I'm trying to find a queen in a double. We're going to be here a long time. Okay, Carol. That'd be a no. We may, you know, I may just say that that's what you should do.
Well, because you couldn't find the queen in the top,
Yeah.
could you just have used that and decided it wasn't queen right and not gone to the bottom and kept looking?
Taking a chance.
Sorry.
Well, they decided that there was no queen in the top.
Well, I didn't see her.
You didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So she.
There's kind of a 50-50 chance that she's not there, or I just didn't see her.
Just didn't see her. Okay.
And you'll kind of get why I can't just do what I did on the other hive here in a bit. Well, as soon as I find her, you'll get it, because I'm going to do something really radical. Yeah. Okay, I don't see her there either.
It's amazing how fast those queens move. Wow.
Yeah, typically the virgins move a lot faster. You can kind of get to understand her age and whether she's mated or laying by how she moves throughout the hive. I'm going to pretend like I found the queen, because, you know, we got to get on with this. So here's something that this isn't specific to cell builders or doing any of this. This is something you can use all the time. If you don't have a couple of these, go get some. These are the great. You can see I use them for everything: smoker fuel, toolbox, everything. I love these things. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this box as what's called a quiet box. Okay, a quiet box. It's a safe place for your queen. So you've found the queen. Queen's on this frame. She's not really, but we'll pretend the queen's on this frame.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to take the queen and we're going to protect her. And you can do this anytime you're inspecting your colony. You're doing your inspection, you say, oh, there's the queen. Have your quiet box ready, set her aside, no more danger. Now you can inspect with impunity. You're not going to kill your queen. Keep her safe. Okay? Things are about to get crazy. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to decide what I want in my cell builder. So what did we say we want in a cell builder? We want nice pollen frame. A good nectar frame. We're going to go for 5 frames in this cell builder, and we'll put an open frame in there, and we'll put a frame with open larvae. Okay, and I know there were some of those in there, so I'll get those from there. Sometimes a clump of bees means that's where your queen is. Okay, I was gonna say, I need an extra box. Well, I got an extra box right here. Okay, there's two diversions from Randy Oliver's description here, and I don't think it makes a difference, but I'll tell you about it anyway because it is. So, he used what he called a swarm board instead of another bottom board, and it's really no different. What it is basically is an upside down inner cover with the hole in the middle covered over. So it's the same as this, just with a smaller entrance. I don't see the difference. So this is where things get crazy. Because I'm going to shake all my bees in here. I'll actually leave that one in there because it's a pretty nice nectar frame. It's nice to have somewhere for the bees to collect. I'll look for that queen again while I'm doing it. Because they don't like to just sit in a box all by themselves. Yeah, it could get a little wild here. So is anybody reading ahead and kind of think they know why I'm shaking all the bees into this box? What am I trying to accomplish here? Any guesses? Think about the composition of the cell builder and what's optimal. You said that? Did you say that? That's right. Nurse bees. So it's the nurse bees. So now you may be asking, well, there's drones in here, there's older bees in here. Are they going to do me any good? And why do I want those in my cell builder? Because I'm not discriminating. I'm putting them all in there. This is an open brood frame, so that goes in my cell starter. Bingo. Where's the entrance on this one? The entrance is over here. But it's a nice day for flight. So everybody's figured out where they live. Everybody lives over here. So the next time they leave this entrance, they'll come here, not back here. Except the young bees, because they don't know what outside is. And so they'll stay in here. Oh, that's heavy. Wow. There's almost nothing on it, too. It's hard to shake. Yes, that's key. Put the entrance on the back. The other thing that Randy teaches is to put the second box. It'll actually end up being the third box, but he said put that box on top of the hive when you're all done. And I don't think that's necessary for the function. I think it's just a way of being able to do this when you just have one hive, right? So where are you going to put the extra box? Well, just set it on top. What'd you find?
This is as good as I'm finding. And it's just because there's
Think we're in a pollen dearth?
a little bit.
Okay, you go ahead and put that back. I'll just pretend. I pretended where my queen is, so, you know, Imaginary, I found the queen. She's in that box over there. It's probably the worst part about this system is finding that queen. So, in all practicality, I'm maybe going to shake my queen into this box, but I'll put this back together in a little bit. They're just going to be all confused. What's that crazy beekeeper doing now? They're used to that. Doing crazy things. So that principle that the old bees are going to fly back is not only tolerable, it's exactly what you want. I'll usually make my cell builder in a little different way, but use that exact principle. That I can put all these bees in my cell builder, and then the old bees will leave. I don't want them in my cell builder. They're no good to me there. Now I'm doing this as a grafting situation, but again, you don't need to graft. I think you should, but you don't need to. So in Randy's description, he's calling for a frame of open brood, which we got here, a comb of fresh pollen, which we pretend that we have here, and those two things should be on each side of the graft frame. So I want to leave a space in the middle here to put my graft frame. And he's just putting drawn comb on the outside. So just empty drawn comb. Put this in here with my queen.
Make it a 10, right?
What's that?
Make it a 10 frame.
I'm actually leaving this a 5. And that's one of the things that I think is kind of nice, because you don't have to go and fetch 10 more frames for a day. And you'll get that in a second.
So can you leave the 5 in a full box, or should it be in a new box?
Yeah, you can leave that there.
You can leave it in the big box.
Yeah.
In the standard.
Yeah, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so now I'm taking my queen. I should have left a space in here. Now I'm going to take my queen that I've shaken all the bees out of here, and I'm going to put her back in the hive. Okay. So now that bottom box is pretty normal, except nurse bees. It's pretty devoid of nurse bees. I want to keep her in there. So we'll put this magic device on there. I put my original second box on there. I'm just going to center these up for housekeeping, sorta. Okay, and this is inconsequential at this point. Okay, and then I'm gonna put that back together. Okay, so again, he's moved his over onto the same stack, but it's not really necessary. See, I think the queen's in here because they seem pretty content, right? Right? Because you know, if she's not, then they're going to be kind of cranky. Okay? So, come back the next day, come back in an hour. Go do your grafting. Pick up your larvae with your little tool, get it in the cup. Get them ready. And come back over here and slip that in there.
So you graft it and put the egg in the cup?
Just hatched larvae. Just hatched larvae, not eggs.
Oh, just hatched.
Yeah. Okay.
What prevents it from falling out of that cup when you turn it back upside down?
Royal jelly.
Upside up.
Royal jelly. That's the way they're made. They're made like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so it kind of...
Yeah. Okay. So we're done. We have our graft in our cell builder. and they're going to start those cells. And we'll come back in 24 hours. So you're asking, isn't it a problem that this box isn't full of frames? Not for 24 hours. Because we're only going to leave it for 24 hours. And when we come back in an hour to put this in, this will be just filled to the brim with those nurse bees, and they'll be all organized, not like they are now, and they'll be ready to go to work, because what they've got here is they've got the open larva. So they go right to work and say, hey, open larva, we got to feed those. And guess what? I've put my graft right beside the open larva. So we've grafted into that. Later, the day we make it, later that day, we've grafted into that. We've put the lid on, left them for 24 hours. When we come back, you can go a little longer if you got a day job or you're got to be away or something. You could leave it 48, that's okay. So when you come back here, you open this one up again, bring these frames out, spread them apart, squash bees, and put these frames in this one. Because what we have here is a queenless cell starter. And we have really heavy honey frames there. Wow, those are heavy. I have to take a frame out because I've got an extra frame with the graft frame. So I'm going to put my graft frame and my open larva right in the middle as much as I can. All these bees. I have to remember I don't know where my queen is. If I did this for real, I'd know where my queen is, but I don't know where she is right now. So just kind of letting that go down real slow. No. They're nurse bees. They're pretty easy to get along with. The old bees are cranky. It's kind of like people that way. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Right?
I resemble that.
You resemble that? I do too. So we got a whole ton of bees in here now. And I think maybe a better way would be to put this box on there and put the other frames in it. Because I'm going to shake those. And that's going to be a mess. So we'll just do that. Okay, yeah, I can see that I should have put that box here and then put the other frames in that, just because this would work out a whole lot better. But you get the idea. So that grafting calendar I gave you, that's now what you need to consult to work out your timing. And don't try and fudge that timing. That's probably the one thing that people find the most difficult about raising queens, is being a slave to that calendar. Right? Because the amount of care that they have about your schedule is this much. They don't care what you have going on in your life. They will punish you if you skip out on the calendar. Ask me how I know that. I've been punished. So that's about all I'm going to show you here with this. That was just a method of cell building that I thought was very nice for a person who has one colony. And again, if you've got one colony and the colony sucks, your queens will suck. So you got to have a really nice colony and outfit it like that.
Why did you, after 24 hours, move things back into that second box? What was the reason for doing that?
In the queen rearing circles that I've been in, I've been told that a queen right finisher, so I should have said that this is now called a queen right finisher. We had a queenless starter, and now we have a queen right finisher. That a queen right finisher will actually finish cells better than a queenless finisher. You can do a queenless finisher, a lot of people do. It's just a different way. And I like this method because if you have one hive of bees, you can do this because you have only disrupted this for 24 hours, right? There's no problem putting it back together. You're not messing up your hive. You're not tearing the whole thing down and making something special out of it. You're just kind of borrowing it for 24 hours and then putting it back the way it was for the most part with the queen excluder and the graft frame.
But this one's going to work if you have a double brood chamber.
Typically, yeah, but I think if you don't have a colony that is supporting a double brood chamber, it's probably not strong enough to make very many cells, right? I think that's probably an indication of, is that colony strong enough for this? But again, if you have a dumpy colony, you're going to have dumpy queens. So, you know, it's your choice. So any other questions about that? Does that kind of make sense? I know I'm not going beyond this right now in the queen calendar, because the cells will be built out and capped, and then we need to take them out on schedule. If you leave that graft bar with those cells on it in there too long, that first one that will emerge will tear down and kill all of the rest. So your whole work is gone. And yeah, ask me how I know. I know that by experience too. It's pretty heartbreaking.
You have one.
What's that?
You have one.
Well, you have one, yeah. And then you've just requeened the hive, is what you've done.
So yes, you can build a builder with the single.
That little nuke that I had John bring out, I know queen producers who build their cells in those. But they build it, see how when I made that queenless cell starter, there was 5 frames? Well, those 5 frames could easily go in that box.
So after the whatever amount of days, you're just putting those containers over top of them and leaving them in there, or you're taking that whole frame out and putting it somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's one of those questions that it is answered by depends. It depends on what you want to do. I use an incubator. So I'll take those out a few days before emergence, and I'll stand those in those cages in my incubator. And then I'm a rogue in the queen rearing world too, because I'll let them emerge as virgins in my incubator. I'll pick them up and mark them the color of the year, and then I release them into my queenless mating nukes. Nobody does that. It works for me though. And I love having the queens marked before they mate, because they're easy to find in the mating nuke. And they're super easy to mark when they're freshly emerged, because they don't walk fast and they can't fly. They just wander around on your hand.
Brad, can you touch on how important it is to keep queen cells vertical? Like when you pull that frame out, not to start spinning it around or dislodging?
That's kind of why I brought this brush out here, actually, because I wanted to sort of show that part. I'm not going to be able to handle that. So when you come back to get your cells, which is going to be, what's the calendar? I'm guessing now. It's about a week or so, isn't it, after that? You come and get your cells. We're all curious, so you know you're going to come back in a couple of days and see how they're progressing. But just be really careful. Don't mess around too much. I have to remember, I don't know where this queen is. I could have put her anywhere.
Is she feeling on the ground back?
Yeah, I hope not. If she's on the ground, there'd be a pile of bees over her. They're pretty easy to find when they're on the ground. They're easy to step on too. So I'm going to handle this like it has my cells on it. Yeah, look at them. They're all over that already. So I want to count my cells. Did you see me shaking those frames earlier? Shake the bees off? Well, don't do that. I want to do this to see how they're building the cells. And no, this is a terrible take, but that's because I didn't actually graft into it. So you can just brush those to see your cells and see how they're being built and whatnot. And when they're all done, I'll have to try to brush all of the bees off so I can collect them. Thought I saw the queen. So I can collect them and put them in my incubator. So I'll have to just come here, and these come off pretty easily. You don't, and like John says, you don't want to be doing this kind of thing. You don't want to be shaking it around. You can get away with a little bit of an angle, but a little bit of a twist will break the wax. And then I just put them in, I actually have it's a little case. Beekeeper friend pointed me toward it. It's a little case that you buy on Amazon. It has a foam liner with holes in it. It's for little vials of essential oil, and it's the perfect size and depth for a queen cell. And it's a nice little case, and it's black, so the sun shines on it and it gets nice and warm. And so I put them in the little case, close it up. I don't usually zipper it, and I just carry it to the house where the incubator is, and I stand those cells in my hair roller cages I showed you earlier. So yeah, don't be shaking those around. There are many opinions on when you can, but just suffice it to say, don't do that.
Box will not say, oh, we better swarm because we're making some, like in her thinking, swarm cells.
Yeah.
So let's take off in 6 days. Like, how do you...
The queen doesn't make that decision regardless,
Okay, so
because
as long as you take it out...
well, if they're
sooner rather
caged,
than
like
later?
when you check your grafting frame, and you notice that your cells are developed and they're capped, what you put those cages on there, those queens are contained. Meanwhile, the original queen is in the bottom, and there's a queen excluder between her and the new queens. So although everyone will be a little angst, no one can kill each other.
Right.
But
usually when they say do that swarming thing, then they make that cell, and then they go, oh, we better go, it's just about to be sealed, or it's sealed, and then it's time to like...
The cell is a symptom, not a cause.
Oh, I see.
Like they won't say, oh, there's a cell, we should swarm.
Right.
No, it's like, we want to swarm, we better make a cell.
Oh, okay.
Right? So seeing all those cells up in here doesn't have an influence like that. No, none.
and if the queen can't leave, the swarm can't happen.
I'm going to just leave this so that they can settle down. Bees everywhere.
So how long is that?
Okay.
This?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the calendar, the handout that we...
Yeah, if I could
Yeah.
see the calendar, I could
Yeah.
go over that. But that's on that calendar I gave you. That's when you start using the calendar, is when these start to progress. You put those in there. Thank you.
If we're grafting the day old, can you hold on? If you're grafting into the cups, the queen cells will be capped on the 8th day, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days after.
So I entered today's date for this, that we were going to graft today. So these dates will follow that if we were to graft today. So that'll be, queen cells are capped on Thursday. It kind of starts retroactively. So even though my graft day is today, it starts on the 7th, because it'll show you that the egg was laid on the 7th. Then on the 9th, you want to create your starter, your queenless cell builder. And then on the 10th, you want to graft. So then graft and put your graft in here on Saturday the 10th, and then on Monday, you'll want to check. Because if your graft completely fails, then you can graft again, right? If you check on Monday and they're not drawing any of your cells, you've got a problem. Like last year, my first builder I made, my first graft, number of my first grafts were complete failures. And I realized I had a virgin queen in my cell builder. So I had to find her and get rid of her. Things didn't improve much after that, though. I had a terrible year. And then,
after day 12, can you put another one in there?
Well, remember, your cell builder can age out, right? Because all those young bees, they're getting older every day. So your cell builder, I mean, I've used my cell builder 2 graftings in a row, but you'll notice a difference of performance on the second round, and then I would just rebuild a fresh one.
and I want to point out, though, that model, that holds true for the model that John or I would use, because we'll make that queenless cell starter as a separate entity, and then we'll use that for a number of rounds of grafting, and we won't just put it back together the next day like we did here. But this is just for a hobbyist. You have one colony and you just want to do 1 round of cells, perhaps. You know, you could do it all again, and I guess if you want to do that all again, it's a bit of work, but you actually are getting constant refresh of young bees, because there's the normal emergence going on in there all the time. So yeah, the queenless cell builder that I would use, I make it once and then I use it for quite some time, and I have to continuously put sealed brood into it to get those young bees always emerging into that cell builder.
Yeah, so you're feeding it. You're feeding it new young bees to
Right,
emerge.
in this method though,
Yep.
because you got the queen below it,
Yep.
you're going to be getting nurse bees coming out of there all the
Right.
time.
Right. And yeah, that's exactly it. That you're always going to be getting influx of nurse bees. So I should have pointed out too that when I do it and I use a queenless cell builder, a queenless cell starter for maybe 3 weeks, then I'll have a separate colony that looks like this, that's my cell finisher. So I graft into my queenless cell starter. 24 to 48 hours later, the graft comes out of there and goes into my queen right cell finisher, which looks exactly like this. Queen in the bottom, queen excluder. I'll pull open larvae up so that the nurse bees are drawn up and can service my graft frame in the top. So that's a separate colony. And for production, every step you need more infrastructure. The cell starter, you can graft into that thing every day. You could start 45 cells a day into one queenless cell starter, but the cells sit in the finisher for a week. So every day, if you're going to do this every day, you need 7 cell finishers. And not only that, but if you're going to be churning out 45 cells a day in a queenless cell starter into 7 cell finishers, you need to have how many mating nukes? Because it's going to take, 15 to 20 days to mate the queens. So you can see how things get out of hand. You see how things get out of hand. You think, I can graft 30 cells into this cell starter every day. And then you start doing that and you realize, oh, wait, what am I going to do with all these cells? You've got nowhere to put them. You can sell them to your friends. You could do that. Graft it every day. Finish the cells. They're worth what, $6 a piece?
Yeah, $5-6 a piece.
A virgin sells for 20 and a mated queen upwards of 45-50. So like the power to make a little extra cash in your apiary is there, just with a little bit of practice, a little bit of information. And I know we're not in it, all in it to make money. Making a couple of bucks is never bad. Helps you buy your sugar, helps you buy your feed and your treatments. Okay, so hopefully this worked. I usually leave these overnight because I'll do 50 of them in a day.
Until you don't need it.
I'll do 50 of them in a day, and then I'm wore out. So I'll leave them overnight, and then I'll come back and do this part the next day. Hopefully this worked. I can't hold this. There you go. Here. My voice is getting tired, but I have to talk loud. I don't think it worked because it's kind of a warm day. Well, we'll see. There's something there. Yeah, not much. So again, I have better success leaving these overnight. There's a few bees, but you'll get a lot more when you do it overnight. I just wanted to demo this since people ask all the time, how do you make a split? So that's a 5-frame box, so I'll put, you can put 4 or 5. But not only that, where's my queen? Remember? We actually know that this one's down here, don't we? So guess what I can do? I can have everything that's in this box, which isn't that much. Okay, and then you of course want to fill that up again. Now this is, again, normally the next day it'll be a lot more full of bees. And most of those bees are going to be young bees. So you can take this and you can put it anywhere you want. And the vast majority will stay in that box. So there's your split. How easy could it be, right? Very easy. So little pieces of equipment like this are vital. There's so many times I hear people say, I had this opportunity and I couldn't take advantage of it because I didn't have this or didn't have that. Having just enough boxes, just enough equipment is not enough equipment, in my opinion. And those Pro Nukes, I have a rule now that if I'm going to go to an out yard, I'll take a few of those full of drawn comb, because I call those things problem solvers. The times that they can solve problems. I got to an out yard, my out yard's only a few miles away. Last summer, I was shaking my bees down, getting ready for honey flow. Well, I found a whole bunch of swarm cells. So I just got out a whole bunch of Pro Nukes, started putting swarm cells in them, set up a little mating yard right at the end of my out yard. And I got about another 7 colonies right there just because I had some Pro Nukes on hand. And it took me hardly any time and effort at all.
So there's a couple methods I use for OTS. I'm about a 6 or 7 year beekeeper now. I've been mentoring under Brad for a while, and he showed me the OTS method. And I use it exclusively because I'm a hobbyist and I work 5 days a week, Monday to Friday.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
And the system for the working hobbyist of an OTS is perfect because it's all based on 7-day schedules. So just to quickly go through the OTS method, it's a method of fooling the colony into thinking they need to draw queen cells by notching and opening up the bottom of the cell to make them think that that's a queen cell, and then they'll start drawing cells off of it. So to do it, I guess I'll just get into the couple of ways that I do it. The first way, this year,
Don't mind me.
Okay. So, and I got my phone ringing in behind me here. So I wasn't prepared to present anything, so just bear with me. This year what I did was I went through I had double brood boxes that came out of the winter, and top and bottom were full of brood in April. So I'm thinking to myself, man, those are two perfect colonies that I can rebuild with. So I went through there, I found the queen, and I put the queen into a little nuke box, and I shook a whole pile of bees in there, knowing that the majority of them are going to come back to the original hive. I went through the frames, and I have a hard time seeing. I can't see past my nose. I have a magnifying glass. Again, I have a hard time identifying, what's the perfect larvae to notch under. So I do the method that Brad was saying. Is he says, well, I know there's eggs here, and I know there's larvae I can see over here. Well, somewhere in the middle, there's going to be a 1-day-old larvae. So I grab my old hive tool, and I nicely get that frame, and I get underneath about 2/3 down, and I just push in to the bottom of the frame, and I drag down, and then I just fold it down. And that opens up a nice little spot for them to draw that queen cell. And they will start drawing queen cells because they think that cell is now vertical instead of horizontal. So I got the queen in the nuke box. I took top and bottom hives. I notch multiple frames. I'll go through and notch 2 or 3 frames, and I'll make 2 or 3 notches on each side of the frame. And I did that in both boxes. Again, from the original hive that stays in the original location, I shake a lot of bees into that second box, knowing that the foragers are going to come back to the original. And that way I got a nice set of bees in this hive, mostly foragers, but they'll take care of the brood because they have to. I got this hive with all nurse bees, so they're going to take care. They can't go anywhere. And I got my queen stuck in here with a bunch of nurse bees, so she can't swarm because she doesn't have anybody to leave with. They're all non-flying nurse bees. The other reason I do this method is I decimate my hives so they don't swarm on me. And I'll go through them now. Instead of worrying every week, I go through and looking for swarm cells. I know that they can't go anywhere. So they're pretty much tied until the honey flow starts in July. So what I do then is I make my notches. I do them on a Saturday or Sunday. I go to work all week. I come back Saturday, Sunday. I go through and I mark my frames with a little yellow or white dot just so I know which ones I notched. And I'll come back through and I'll very carefully lift those up and I check for my queen cells. And they'll be fully drawn at that time because it'll be the 9 days by then. Should be.
Yeah, it's
3 days to hatch.
Right, it's 7 days after.
7 days after. So
yeah.
they'll be fully capped. Should be fully capped queen cells in there. And I'll go through them and just 2 things I can do. I can decimate all of them except the 2 juiciest, fattiest looking queen cells that are in there. Or I can start making more splits. And that's where it can get a little crazy. And it sucks. Sometimes you go through there and you go, gee, they really did good. And you got 15 queen cells sitting in there and you got to knock them all off except for 2 or 3. So I'll go through then on the 7 days after, and I'll start culling all the queen cells that I don't like, leaving just the 2. And then from that point, they're on their own for about 28 days, 21 days, roughly. I give them 21 days. Yeah.
What would you see on a queen cell that would be something that would do it?
Small cells, like really small ones, cells that were drawn outside of where I notched, more like an emergency cell. They're usually quite small and they don't have a lot of space to develop. That's kind of what I'm looking for in a cell. So I'm trying to find, there's a lot of times you sit there and go, man, I just hate doing this because I'm killing these perfectly good cells, but you can't have 15 queens emerging all at once. It'll be battle royale in there, and you'll end up with a one queen that survived, but she's going to be beaten down from fighting. So yeah, it sucks, but yeah, I'm looking for small cells that weren't developed properly, or sometimes they draw 2 or 3 cells, side by side, so they don't have a lot of space to develop. I'm looking for those nice, big, long, juicy cells, the biggest ones I can find, and I leave them.
How many notches do you do?
I usually notch 2 times on each side of the frame. I'll try and find a couple nice spots to notch. I try to stay in the middle, but a lot of times, you're off to one side or you're on the bottom, depending on how far the eggs are drawn out. And I'll usually do 2 or 3 frames in each hive. I mean, they'll decide on their own how many queen cells they can draw out based on the size of the hive that they have at that time. So then 7 days later, I come through and I call all the hives down to basically 2 or 3 cells that I want to keep. And then after that, about 21 days later, because we know she's got 7 days after checking, she's going to emerge, because she emerges on 16 days. And then you want to give her at least 14 days to mate. So I don't want to go in that hive at all until about 14 days after I know that she emerged. And then what I do is I don't go back in and try and find a queen. I just go back in and look for evidence of a queen. I look for eggs. If I see eggs, I'm a happy camper. And then I know I got 2 viable hives. If one of the hives didn't make it, she didn't mate properly, or she got picked off in the air by a bird or whatever reason that she didn't make it back or she didn't mate properly, I still have my original queen in my newt box that I can now either merge back, or I can try again if it's early enough in the season. I can take open brood and start notching it again and put a frame of brood in there with notches and start the process over again. That was this year's method. Last year's method is, the theory is the same, but I didn't want to spend the time looking for the queen. So I did what Brad was showing you. I had double brood boxes. I didn't worry about having a nuke. I shook the queen down. I shook all the bees into the bottom box, put my queen excluder on, and then put the original box back on. I usually do that on a Thursday evening after work, and I come back on Saturday. All those nurse bees are back up taking care of the brood. I know the queen's in the bottom. I pulled that box off. I notch it, and then all the foragers that were left in that box will go back, but that box will mostly be nurse bees. And it's the same process of notching, waiting your 7 days, checking for the queen cells, and then, like I said, culling down to the last 2 or 3 good cells, and the process is exactly the same after that. So those are the 2 methods I use. This year I wanted to keep the queen because I really wanted to expand. The previous year I didn't expand that much, so I only did 1 split out of a colony instead of 2 splits.
Thanks, Steve.
That's basically OTS in a nutshell.
That's awesome. So did you find any difference? Because I would think that the splitting of the hive method, now you're actually splitting your resources in 2.
Yeah.
So you're creating a less robust cell builder. Did you see any difference?
No. I mean, there were some that didn't produce 15 cells, but
you're not.
For the most part, every hive that I split down and notched produced queen cells and produced an abundant amount of them.
I'm about to.
I can show you if Brad would let me practice on one of them.
You can practice. You want me to find it for you?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one with eggs in it or anything. Just
Well, we'll try and get it as good as we can here. I find I find it's easier to do on a newer comb. It's a little softer.
Yeah, if you have old comb that's just thick black grooved comb and it's really old, you're gonna have a hard time getting in there and notching because it'll just tear the comb apart.
This is very scattered. The pattern's not uniform. There's eggs and probably 4 or 5 day old larvae in it. That's weird. They're all over the place. Crazy queen. The queen is drunk.
It is hard on very old comb, and I had that problem this year because a lot of my eggs were in that old comb, and I couldn't even see the eggs in the bottom. It was black down there. So sometimes I just blindly notch and hope they pull a queen shell.
Yeah, they typically won't go wrong. You know, they won't use stuff that's too old. Typically. Yeah, that looks okay.
Right?
Right in here, I think. Okay, gather.
I can't see anything without my...
Let me get the camera on you because I never really get a good video of this.
How not to do it. I can't see the eggs in here at all.
Well, just do your best because
Just do a fake one.
we're one.
Because I don't know, what I might do is notch a little wider, but let's say this is the row I want to do. I'll just come in here and I'll just push this down and I'm pulling back at the same time. And then I just pull it down.
Oh, I see. So half the cell's missing?
Yeah, half
something like that?
to a third of the cell is missing.
Oh.
And then I just pull it down. And if I don't know exactly where it is, maybe you go, Brad, can I do
You do
work?
whatever you
I
want.
can do whatever I want. Okay. It's nice if you have a clean tool.
All in the name of education.
You know, sometimes I
Yeah.
can see the eggs, right? I know
Cleaning the
there's
sticky
eggs
off
up
the
here,
edge of your
and I know
hive tool.
the progression of the eggs going to the center is going to be older and until you get to a full larvae. But so sometimes I don't know, so I'll just go and do it like so and pull that down and just push it down and that's it. And you put that back in and now they think that's a queen cell.
That's one notch or two?
That's I would call that one notch. I'm showing if I didn't know where the larvae was, just make a longer one. They'll figure it out. If there's an egg there or a larvae there that's at the right age, they'll draw on it. And I might do that a couple times, you know, on a frame, and I'll do that also on the other side. And I'll mark this frame. Sometimes I just with an X.
I want to accentuate OTS, and this is why I asked Steve that question, is I always hesitate to, when I explain OTS to people or even have Steve do it because he did it for me, there is no magic in that notch, okay? The magic, again, is in your cell builder, right? And in this case, the cell builder is the colony that you're notching into, removing the queen, because again, what's the first rule of cell builder? It's queenless. So I just want to accentuate that this notch is not magic. It helps, that's all. And it helps you get a little bit of control so that you can have, like Steve said, well, I'll notch 2 frames or 3 frames. So then if I get queen cells on 3 frames, I can make 3 mating nukes out of that when the cells are sealed. So that just gives you a little bit of control. It's not the magic part. The cell builder is the magic part. If you have a little hive, I know people on the OTS forums, they'll quite often ask, if I split this up into a 5-frame nuke and then notch it, will it work? No, it won't work because your cell builder sucks. You know, you gotta have a big, strong cell builder. Okay, so OTS is a lot like what's called a walkaway split. And I think you can guess what a walkaway split is just by the name. And because a walkaway split is this easy. Walkaway split. Put a lid on it. There's one thing though. You want to make sure that there's eggs and very young larvae in here. Because now they're queenless. What's the number one rule of a queen, a cell starter? Queenless. So now they're queenless. I would probably find my queen and shake a whole bunch of bees out of there into here, because I know I'm going to have flyback. So I want my cell builder to be robust. Even if I weaken that one a little bit, it's got a laying queen. They're good. So that's the only two things I would say about a walkaway. Anything to add?
Yeah, like there's a really huge beekeeper in Alberta, and this is all he does every spring. He takes his doubles, he gets about 60%. You know, for him, it's about time, and it can be that easy. People sometimes will scared to go from doubles, which we recommend that all novices start out with, to singles, because they think it's a much smaller hive. Keep in mind that in a double or in a single, this is honey, right? In a double,
there's 3 on each side, honey.
Yeah, there's 3 on each side. Your brood, your laying area ends up being roughly the same. It's about the advantage of a double, of course, is more resources, so you get that kind of cushion. But that's all the magic there is. And of course, if you're running doubles, you can do a Hail Mary walkaway split and maybe get twice the amount of bees.
Yep. On the double single thing, a lot of commercials, like myself, I'm tiny commercial, but I run singles as a rule. Now they'll grow into doubles this time of year, then when honey flow hits, they'll go back to singles, just to build the colony. However, if you do the math, a queen can't lay more than about 9.5 frames of brood peak season. So the idea that she needs that more space in order to be able to lay that much is not valid. Mm-hmm. I go into a double because I'm trying to get her to lay more outside of a honey flow. So I want to give her another box of drawn comb. She hits that the next day, and just boom, she's laid, half of that box in a couple of days. So anyway, that's just it. And when you knock them to single, then you get to harvest the honey. You don't have 10 frames of honey that's in a brood chamber. It's economics, right? So you get another, 40 pounds of honey. Downside is, which I learned the hard way too, I learned a lot of stuff the hard way, is when you take that honey off of that single, you better start feeding them like the next day, because they're going to starve to death because you've just taken away all their food.
When you check, the queen right for down the road, and you find that your walkaway split failed, are you out anything? No. Let's put it back. You're fine. Pretty easy way to gamble and not lose.
One last thing to show you, and this is kind of just an aside, because I just discovered this when I was trying to find my cell builder hive. So I was checking for various things, and look what I found.
One on this side too.
Yeah? So how do you know they're superseders?
Because they're in the middle of the frame.
Yes, but they could be emergency frame cells, right?
That's true. Yes.
So how would you know if it's a supersedure or an emergency?
You got no new eggs anymore.
Eggs. If it's emergency, there's not going to be any eggs in this hive. If it's a supersedure, there are eggs in this hive, because you still have a laying queen. By the way these are built, I would say these are supersedures, because it looks to me like this was a cell or a cup that was built like this, and then she laid into it. Whereas an emergency cell, I got a little bee, this is a little more, emergency cells are, the egg is laid down inside the cell, and so they're very small. They don't stick out very far. And they're a little more like this, or even less protruding than that. So what would you do? You open this fairly nice looking colony, and you see that. What would you do?
Make sure you have a queen, and if you do, make a split.
That's one thing you can do, because I go through this colony and I see lots of brood, and
if she's a good queen.
Populous, and to me, I think, hey, she looks good. What do I do? How old is she?
Make sure you have eggs
Yes.
and a queen, because if that queen, if there is no eggs, then you know the timing for those supersedures, because they can always make more supersedures as long as they've got eggs to make them out of.
That's a 1-year-old queen.
So going back to the walkaway splits. So for myself, the one reason I don't like to do them is because of the fact you're getting very small area for them to draw that queen cell, because they're drawing emergency cells.
Yeah,
Does it make that much of a difference?
I don't know that it does.
No?
I really don't. It might, but I don't know. I've never heard anybody talk about that.
Yeah.
Emergency cells typically aren't the best, primarily I believe because emergency cells can happen anytime. They'll make an emergency cell in late November if the queen dies. Well, that's not going to work. Everybody knows that. And that's why this kind of thing on the 10th of June, I'm pretty okay with that. It's going to give this hive a brood break. Well, that's awesome, because that's a great mite control strategy.
Actually, that's the other thing about OTS.
Yeah,
Really
brood break.
helpful is it's a brood break to control your mites.
You can study what Mel Disselcone says about OTS and whatnot. Resources online and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff. And don't forget, everything you read and everything you hear, everything you watch on YouTube, remember that things are regional. Things are different climates, and my mentor lives 150 miles from here, and at times his season is a week ahead of mine, right? So you just always have to judge by what's going on in your apiary, and how do you want to manage things. When somebody says you have to graft if you're going to raise queens, you don't want to graft. What are the options? And when I discovered OTS, I thought, hey, this is awesome. It has its downsides. You have to practice it and find out what those downsides are. See if it's something you can put up with. Works great for Steve. I still do it. I have OTS queens here, and they're some of the best queens. This one here. This is a J20, okay? So all my queens have some letters and then some numbers. Well, the numbers are the year that they were born. That's a J20. That's an OTS J20. And we had lots of those. And I think there's maybe that one and one more left. So you tell me OTS doesn't work? That's hogwash. It works great. It can fail. Sure, it can fail. But it can produce some fantastic results.
I think it's a nicer way to do it if you don't need mass production of queens.
Absolutely. Right? Yes. It's primarily the program that Mel lays out. It's primarily mite control and swarm control strategy.
Yeah.
So and making money. He's in middle Michigan, so he's a very different season, and he makes lots of splits using OTS, and so he makes a lot of money on it. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff we talked about today, and I know we didn't give you every detail you need to be a master queen producer, but I hope we gave you enough to say some of the roadblocks, some of the hurdles that I had might not be there as much now, and I'm maybe going to try some of this stuff.
That's been great, Brad. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you all for coming.
That's much bigger than it was before.